Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. You made it to the last session on day 2 of the conference. I think you all deserve a little pat on your back because as marvelous as this conference is, it's a little bit tiring sometimes, you know? Introduce myself. Hello, I'm reading my instructions. My name is Erica Morton. I use she and her pronouns. I'll be moderating this session with you today. I'm a part of the lovely team at the Canadian Observatory on Homelessness. Before we dive into our pretty fab session today, I just want to open up this session in a good way with a land acknowledgement. Just want to offer that the 2025 National Conference on Ending Homelessness is being held in Tiohtià:ke on the traditional unceded territory of the Ganyahaga peoples. The peoples of the Ganyahaga Nation have lived on this territory since time immemorial. As traditional keepers of the land and the waters, their culture and presence have nurtured and continue to nurture this territory. The Canadian Alliance acknowledges the many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people from coast to coast to coast who participate in this conference and lead the work on ending homelessness across Turtle Island. And just want to also add to that, to hold myself, check myself and hold myself accountable, that I am an uninvited guest on these lands with a British background, and I work for a settler organization that conducts research on homelessness, which, as we know, research has had historical and current day problematic relationships with Indigenous peoples and beyond, but we're trying to work on that. And so while as a moderator, I'm asked to read this land acknowledgement as a part of sort of our duties, don't want to make it just a checkbox activity, at least for myself. And so just want to take a moment to personally reflect on my own commitments and actions while I'm attending this conference to honor truth and reconciliation. And as much as it's been really important for me to come, to this conference to learn and unlearn and to just really open my eyes, my mind, and my heart to the things that I need to carry with me about the realities that are affected by Indigenous communities, but also to learn about the incredible and amazing work that these communities are doing. That is great to be here and do that and embrace that, but I'm far more convinced that the important work carries out after this conference when we all leave and go back into our communities. And I truly hope that you'll join me in reflecting on one moment, one experience, one speaker that you heard from one of the Indigenous sessions, and to carry that with you in the work that you're doing so that we move forward in a good way, and that, you know, we are truly honoring and advocating with Indigenous peoples to uphold their self-determination, you know, land back movements, and to actually walk the walk of reconciliation. So just want to offer that to get us started. Now we can move into the conversation for today. Sorry, I should have also said, if you're wondering what room you're in, we are in the session COH7, Making the Shift, How Family and Community Connections Can Lead to Stable Housing and Better Outcomes for Youth. So that's what we're about to hear from the lovely panelists. We're going to start off with Stephen Gates, who is my boss, and I always get a little bit nervous when I have to moderate my boss, and probably have to cut him off. No, because I have to cut him off. That's under my contract general duties as a sign, but... And I have supervision with my other boss on Monday, and... You know? Anyway. And then Ahmed, we just discussed this. Ahmed's going to go next, following Steve, have a nice complimentary conversation. And then Heidi Walter is going to talk to us a little bit about some great family natural support stuff. So I'm going to sit here. I am going to watch time. We'll do my best to moderate that. Speakers, please make sure you're speaking into the mic so that the virtual folks can hear, and everyone in this room. And then, and then we'll get into the last half hour or so for questions and answers. So I'm going to turn over. I was told you can take like half an hour.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I'll take less than that. We'll see.
Oh, okay. It was 20, but then Ahmed said he didn't think he needed a full 20.
Oh, yeah, you did say that. Okay.
So we'll aim for half an hour.
Okay, so there, I set my own clock there to keep track of myself. So in the title slide here, the one thing I want you to notice is that in addition to myself, I listed 3 other people. I should have listed 4. Heidi Walter should be there. And that's important because to do this kind of research absolutely requires a team effort. It's really important. And one thing, I'm just going to add one more thing. See, I'm already using up all my time. I'm down, you know. But both Heidi, Walter, and you were part of the creation of Housing First for Youth. So that's true. So anyway, I'm going to show you results, or start showing you results, quantitative results from our research on Housing First for Youth. The research is important. I think the AWHC project is, you know, maybe one of the best case studies of why research matters. You had a conservative government that hated research, was like destroying environmental research, but the research on AWHC made them move in the direction of taking it up as central government policy. So the other thing is that there's resistance to preventive interventions. Has been for years, where people say, well, there's no solid evidence base, so we need to build this evidence base. But I want to end by saying, you know, much of what we do in this world of homelessness doesn't have research evidence. So anyway, let's start. We'll start with what is Housing First for Youth. That's why I wanted to go first, so lay out the groundwork here. Okay, so Housing First for Youth was developed in Canada in 2014 as a result of the government's moves to make Housing First a policy priority, because they didn't add any funding, so communities were cutting programs, including youth programs. And it was at a meeting in Hamilton with Erica where people were saying Housing First doesn't work for youth, and there's some evidence that the Pathways model doesn't work so well with younger people. But at that time we were saying, we shouldn't say it doesn't work for youth. What we need to do is adapt the model so that it meets the needs of developing adolescents and young adults. And that's what we did. We put a lot of work into that over the years. These are examples of some of our resources we've developed. You know, the program model guide is accompanied by the operations manual. So we're trying to share not just the concept to people, but how to do it. So I'm not going to read this out because that's always boring when people read their slides. I do that sometimes. But anyway, it's important. It's a rights-based intervention for young people aged 16 to 24. But we're going to have that one out because I think it should be from 12. So anyway, but the key is it's defined and developed to serve youth. And we've developed a lot of experience on how to do that. And Heidi trains on that all over the world. And so and it's spreading, and we need more of this in Canada. So the core principles of Housing First for Youth are laid out here. We have it much more extensively discussed, but they really do guide the work, right? And you've always been a proponent of that, the degree to which the core principles are really, you have to pay attention to them, because they kind of set out like what is important, what is non-negotiable, right? And these are important. Yeah. So in terms of the service, you know, the Pathways model of Housing First focuses on scattered site housing as the housing option. But for youth, you got to think differently based on their needs, their developmental capabilities, their life skills. Some young people, well, this is actually normative in Canada. People under 25 in Canada generally live with their parents. And so for some young people, the solution might be to reconnect with family, that's part of the intervention, and possibly return home or stay with another relative, that kind of thing. So those options are on the table, but also important is supportive housing, temporary housing, and this isn't the updated slide. I forgot to. And then eventually maybe settled accommodation. But the thing is, think about when you do Housing First for You, think about what would any young person need? What would they want? And build it around that. And one of the things that you have to be prepared for is that people might change their mind. Right? They might be, I want to go back home, and then after a while it's like, no, That's not going to work for me. So flexibility is important. Here's the range of supports. It's expanded compared to pathways because it contains a lot that's about the development of young people. So that focus on attachment to school and employment. In the social inclusion part, the family and natural supports is central. One of the developments in our thinking about family and natural supports is it should be the engine that drives the bus of most of the work we do with young people. So, social innovation and evidence. So, this is where we test things out, we design things, we evaluate things, and see if they work. And we also use the evaluation to help improve the quality. So, the question is, does Housing First for Youth work? This is an important question because you can develop an intervention and it may be really important to you and you may really like it, but you may do research on it and it turns out the research is like, it isn't really having an impact. I've seen this happen. So one is hopeful that Housing First for Youth works, right? But the best way to do it is through research. So our Making the Shift Youth Homelessness Social Innovation Lab is the vehicle that we've used to do some extensive work on Housing First for Youth. And so we did demonstration projects where we received funding from Government of Canada that we handed straight over to the community organizations. We trained those organizations and then implemented the model and studied it. And so in Ottawa, the people in the study were young people currently experiencing homelessness. In Toronto, it was to test it as an early intervention model for young people exiting care. And then in Hamilton, we wanted to test out what would an Indigenous-led and designed version of Housing First for Youth look like and how effective would it be. So the method we use for this is a randomized controlled trial, which means one group gets the intervention, the other group does not, and then you compare the results. The group that doesn't get Housing First for Youth doesn't mean that they are cut off from services or aren't getting other kinds of interventions that could include housing. It's just they're not getting Housing First for Youth. And so we collected data through interviews and surveys, like surveys every 3 months, was it? Focus groups. In person. And Heidi did what I would call ethnographic research on aftercare, like what happens when young people exit a Housing First for Youth program, what kind of supports would be helpful. So let's go to the data here. Okay, 4 minutes. That's looking good. Okay.
This is awesome that you're watching this in real time. This is not done in 4 minutes.
And to go to the question of everybody, it's at the end of the day, it's like I'm like double fisting coffee. Just get through things. Okay. So in terms of, this is the course of the research we did. So we received funding, trained everyone up, and then something happened, which I like to call a pandemic. And so we wound up doing this work in the middle of a pandemic, which, raised our concerns, given what we know today, for instance, like the negative impact of the pandemic on young people, right? Like we had to factor that into the Housing First for Youth delivery of services, right? So anyway, we tracked young people for 48 months, but we're only looking at the first 36 because there was a drop-off of participation in the research in the final year. But still, 36 months of data tracking young people in a program it's a luxury to be able to do that and test that amount of people for that time. So in terms of the study, here we go. In terms of study design, we're looking at a number of factors that we wanted to mention. Look at this, it's a whole crew. Close the door. No, just kidding. Just joking, Allison. Okay, we had, Yeah, so this is the methodology that I just described, so I won't go into much more detail on that. But what happened then? Okay, what happened after 36 months? And let's look at some of the changes. So first we'll go with the demographics. So, you know, the average age was between 19 and 20, 41, I can hardly read that because I'm looking at the screen here. So that's a breakdown based on, you know, the number of participants. You know, so our research on Housing First for Youth suggested a very diverse group of young people were receiving these supports, including groups that are traditionally overrepresented in the youth homeless population, such as Indigenous youth, Black youth, and young people who are 2S LGBTQ plus. We had more women in the sample than men. There's some degree of gender diversity there that's also overrepresentation. Yeah, here's that 2S LGBTQ, and it's important to note that a fairly significant number of people were born outside Canada. Okay, so let's go to the data collection. Yeah, we just discussed that. Housing stability, this is the first thing we measure. So what you can see here is that so we tested it, the two groups, we tested them at baseline, so they got interviewed right, oops, I'm pantomiming over here when I do that. So we tested them at baseline and then tracked their housing stabilization over time, over 36 months. And so you can see that for, you know, the Housing First for Youth group fairly quickly was up over 80% and basically was, in terms of having housing, stable housing. And, you know, they couldn't go any higher after that, really, because they were at basically almost 100%. And so what's interesting is the treatment as usual group came up and their housing stability did a change over time as well. So I'm going to go through this quick so we can, great animation. I want to thank Ahmed. He's the one who does all this stuff. He's like does the PowerPoint slides and then I steal them. That's my job. So anyway, health and well-being. We had a number of measures of health and well-being, and so I'm going to go through them. So the first one is physical health. And so on this table, the blue-green line, let's see what it looks like for you. It's green. Okay. The green line is the Housing First for Youth group. The red line is the treatment as usual. And at baseline, the treatment as usual group was slightly better physical health, but you can see that it started to decline. That's getting into the pandemic too. But the Housing First for Youth group sustained growth in their physical health over time, so that's good. Psychological health. This is one that really surprised me, because with the At-Home Chez project and with the Pathways model, achieving improvement in psychological health is really difficult. So I didn't expect to see much of an improvement, but you can see here that the Housing First for Youth group had an improvement in psychological health, and it stayed fairly constant relative to the treatment as usual group. In terms of resilience, okay, this is important. So the treatment as usual group started at baseline ahead of Housing First for Youth group. Very low levels of resilience for the Housing First for Youth group. But through the pandemic, they managed to like really have an improvement in resilience, right? And it shows you like housing stabilization combined with supports gives people a platform to thrive, right? And so you know, this data is really interesting as well. We had expected things to be flatter or decline more because of the pandemic. And so there is a pandemic effect there, but it's not as glaring as it might have been. So behavioral shifts. So this is an interesting one because the arch of the data is the opposite with the other things, right? So the lower the score, the less likely you're involved in crime and violent activities. And so we saw that there was a pretty significant improvement with the group in terms of crime and violence. And so there was things progressed positively for treatment as usual, but then it kind of spiked up in the last 12 or 18 months. So substance disorder screener, it's the same thing, right? Where the lower the score on the table, the better it is for you. And so we saw like very significant gains within the Housing First for Youth group. So complementary supports and skills, career planning, they both, this is an interesting thing you're going to be covering as well in the qualitative, yes. Right? So it's a very interesting, like that, how people think about the future when their housing is stabilized, when they have food, when they have relationships, what's possible. And one of the things is that people can think more about the future and what they want to do and actualize it. So anyway, we see there some really good improvements. Again, this time it's back to normal, so the higher your score, the better things are. Money management, big gains again. So the life skills component is working. And social supports and inclusion. So social relationships are a big thing. So one of the 5 areas of support that we have in the model is social inclusion, right? All young people need friends. They need meaningful adults in their lives. And we focus too on the family, right? The family is important. And so here's the scores for young people in terms of their social relationships, score by time and group. So the Housing First for Youth group had a dip down, both groups did, in the middle. That was both, I would say, a pandemic effect, but also the one program was going to stop seeing young people around then. So people were feeling probably a little less supported at that point. So perceived social support in terms of a significant other. So somebody who's really matters in your life. Look here again at the gains. It's very positive. And then finally, perceived social support from family. Look where they started in terms of baseline, and then look where it ended up, right? So I have to say that the results we have here, there's one more here. What was that previous one? Friends, all right. So here's family. Thank you very much. Another responsibility she has is when I mess up, she has to provide me with the right information as quickly as possible. So anyway, but that family one was delightful to see that that support's there. So here are some quotes. And so what you can see from the results of this is that overall there was significant improvement across a whole range of areas in these people's lives. So, at 36 months, this is very compelling results. It's much more of an improvement than I expected, right? So I keep mentioning the at-home Shuswap project, but there was a number of areas where they didn't see gains. I mentioned mental health, but also the social inclusion piece didn't see a lot of positive gains either, right? So, but here it's pretty compelling that in all these different areas, there were improvements that were sustained, that they started at very low level at baseline, and the improvement was quite considerable. You're doing this one, right? Okay, so don't look at this. Okay, we'll have to proceed through it. There we go. Okay. Whew. Okay, so anyway, the implications of this are many. So this research shows that Housing First is very promising It's more than promising. It's proven to be an effective approach for preventing and ending youth homelessness. Housing First for Youth, as a prevention-based approach, needs to be supported, I think, by different orders of government, including Government of Canada. This is a good intervention, but Housing First for Youth programs, they cost money, and we need both philanthropic support and government support to take this to scale. We need to invest long-term in early intervention models like this and support communities to do the work. Our research on where the sector is at shows that people really want to do this. I think it's in the range of like 73% of service providers in a survey of 150 people want to do Housing First, but they need support from their community entities. They need help. They need training and technical assistance, and they need funding, because without new funding, they're in a position where there's an opportunity cost. They have to stop doing something else before they can start doing Housing First for Youth. The model, Housing First for Youth, again, it was developed in Canada, but it's taken off in Europe more quickly than in Canada. So we're going to try to turn that around.
We need to turn that.
That's right, we can all turn that around. So that's it for my presentation. There we go. All right, 21 minutes.
Okay, thank you, Steve, for making my job a lot easier and having some less awkward conversations during supervision on Monday when I get scolded for making my boss stop talking. I hope tech person, I'm not going to screw this up. I think I just screwed it up. I'm sorry, tech person. You showed me such good instructions and I'm just botching this right now. No, I can do it. I can do it. I'm just not doing it the way you showed me. Okay, and Steve, thank you for presenting such a compelling case for Housing First. It's pretty wild to think of the journey, Housing First for Youth, it's pretty wild to think of the journey from thinking of it as a concept to now seeing really amazing outcomes. And we're gonna keep hearing more outcomes from dear Ahmed. I'm doing it. Right?
Yeah.
He's like, not my way. Okay, how much time are you taking? 20 minutes?
Yeah, I'll try to, well, I have to skip some slides. Well, thank you so much for joining and participating in this session. Of course, I'm not going to steal Steve's thunder because pretty much he covered a lot of ground on the Housing First for Youth and made a compelling case. So I'm going to cover the qualitative side of the Housing First for Youth project as much as, like Steve covered the quantitative side of the project. And I just realized that I made a bad decision because I, cut down on caffeine. I completely stopped drinking coffee like a couple of years ago, and I'm not having enough energy to.
If anything, we all are going to have a lot of good laughs at the end of the day.
So, yeah. Right.
It's all good.
All good. So I'll try to soldier through and hope to keep you engaged in this presentation. By the way, I should mention that a lot of this work is based off of my former colleague, Cora McDonald, who's not with us here today, I believe, but she's done a lot of data collection, data analysis on this body of work, and I just wanted to mention that this work is also indebted to her commitment and working with the data. So I just wanted to mention that. So, well, again, Steve covered a lot of ground around youth homelessness, but I just wanted to, so this one I think was the one that I was able to retrieve from point-in-time estimate from Infrastructure Canada. And as you can see, it speaks volume about why we really do this kind of work, right? And so the latest data really shows a noticeable spike, as you can see, at the age range 15 to 19, and then from 20 to 24, where you can see many people first became homeless during late adolescence or early adulthood, right? And so 44%, and this is like why we are failing right? So we need to do something about it. And this is like borrowing Steve's words. And of course, he's my boss, so I have to be careful about that. But so this is like a pipeline into chronicity, right? So I'm gonna skip these slides because Steve has covered all of. Just as a rehash, I'm going to cover the qualitative part of the Housing First Youth project, where we sat down with youth and spoke with them. So these are the findings that I'm going to focus on, starting with housing stability and security. So one of the core ideas that emerged during our data analysis was moving into stable housing really marks a transition from instability and uncertainty to safety and consistency, right? A private space really shows self-expression and aligns with personal values, right? And a lot of young people were able to interact with their landlords, were developing good relationships, and stability is foundational to everything else, like education, relationship, career. Imagine that if you have like a resume and you want to put down like a permanent address on your resume, it makes a lot of difference than putting in like a temporary address on your resume. So as you can see, for instance, I'm in reading verbatim, I'm in a healthy, stable relationship where we do want to get a house together. I never thought I'd be able to have an apartment, to be in a good relationship, go to school, and so on and so forth. Another theme that emerged, a common thread, was around independence and autonomy. So having their own apartment symbolizes autonomy and independence, kind of an adult identity, right? And it actually aligns with one of the core principles of the Housing First for Youth, choice, right? And it kind of symbolizes empowerment, independence, and the act of taking responsibility, both financially and emotionally. So it marks transition into a healthier life down the road. Moving on. Another common thread was around social inclusion, which leads to healthier and stronger relationships. And this very concept really underscores one of the Housing First for Youth core outcomes, right? Family reconnection and strengthened natural supports as part of the Housing First for Youth. She was showing some of those perceived scores from the way that the participants received support from their friends, from their peers, from their family and significant other, right? It shows up here as well. And Housing First for Youth does not just provide housing. It creates disability and support that allow youth, right, to heal and rebuild relationships that were strained or lost during homelessness. And I just wanted to point out here something, that when something is normalized or is considered normalized, such as social inclusion, being connected to the community and society, right? And when we notice that a particular group of populations, they don't have that characterization, we have to work really hard to give them back something that is considered normalized, right? Normative also. So these stories on the right-hand side, those are the quotes I was able to extract from the data, show how like having stable housing and the right kind of support can help families back together. So for instance, in the lower bottom right corner, as you can see, there's a sense of being where I should be as a 20-year-old, right? It says a lot about getting back on track, feeling grounded and having a life that makes sense. One of the significant threads that actually came up during our exploration, let's say, was around growth and hope for the future. And I just want to spend some time on this slide as well, because I think what really defines us as human beings are a space where we could actually, dream and have a drive and desire for a hopeful future. It reminds me of this is where I need caffeine. So a German philosopher, Ernest Bloch, if I'm not mistaken, I think there was a book like published many years ago around principle of hope. And he says, that what really sets apart human beings from other social animals, let's say, it's the space that we could actually be hopeful. Desire for change, right? As well as like Aristotle once said, that hope is a waking dream, right? So this is the ability of the Housing First Youth program that allowed youth to have that kind of a space for, hope, for imagining like how we could actually plan out for our future, let's say. So, and you take just one sentence and you see there's a lot of meanings, there is a lot of subtleties that it takes a lot of time for a researcher like us, to unpack and unfold and unpeel. Because I never thought I'd be able to have an apartment, to be in good relationship, go to school again, etc. So this is the slide that Steve actually skipped, so he left it for me. This is from our, extended colleagues, let's say. They have worked on some of the Housing First Youth data, and they were looking at the, the Housing First group versus Treatment as Usual group, where they did not really receive support services from the Housing First for Youth program, but they did have access to available community support, right? So one of the things that actually they came up with was the fact that, those young people in the Housing First group actually had, more plans for their future. They were able to actually conceptualize a future where, they were having a plan, they could actually land a job, go to school. So this was one of the marked difference that we were able to observe. And the paper is actually publicly available, so it's open access, so please Google it and then you can read it for yourself. And of course there were some turning points. Am I doing in terms of time?
About like
10 minutes? Okay, good. All right, so I need to slow down or speed it up? I don't know. Okay, all right. So in terms of, so those were like high points, especially when it comes to housing stability, but also there were some turning points. And these narratives show personal growth as well as increased self-awareness and empowerment resulting from participation in the Housing First Youth program, but also it illustrates resilience, recovery, transition to adulthood. So, So I think, we can say, and I think it's safe to say that these accounts demonstrate like how supportive interventions can catalyze internal transformation, right? When someone is facing a dilemma, and whether they should go this direction or that direction, that makes a lot of difference. So for the Treatment as Usual group, progress was a little bit circumstantial, meaning that it was a little bit different than the Housing First group because it required a little bit of self-discipline on their own, right? So they did not really receive like a formal structural support from the Housing First Youth group. They did access to available community support options, but still they needed a little bit of discipline on their own. They needed to rely on their own intuition and experience as well as, available support to lead an independent life. And there were obviously moments of a struggle. And this is what we consider like low points marked by experiences of trauma, instability, anxiety, fear, hopelessness, frustration. The list can go on. But it shows how deep-seated adversity and external disruptions shape participants' sense of self and progress. And of course, I'm reading off of the right corner, like the bottom one. When I hear coronavirus was going to hit and I wasn't in school, it kind of made me feel hopeless because I just thought the cycle of me having to do school would repeat again, and it did. So I think we have all gone through the pandemic, right, together, and it hit pretty hard, and we all have experienced sort of anxiety to different, degrees. But I just wanted to point out that, it's human beings, right? We all go through difficult periods, but the important thing, the way that we bounce back, right? The important thing is that, how resilient we are in order to be able to bounce back from a difficult period. And then probably the last theme that I'm going to cover here is about how stress, like loss of control or emotional strain, characterized as interpersonal factors, could be actually compounded by structural factors, right? And those system inefficiencies, fragmentation, and gaps could actually render those young participants more vulnerable, right, to fluctuations in the market, in the housing market, for instance. So it highlights how both systemic and interpersonal factors could actually compound the stress and, it is considered like a barrier to health and well-being. So what are we learning from all this? I guess Steve, again, covered a lot of it, but I believe for provincial and federal governments, I think these findings highlight the importance of scaling youth-focused prevention and housing stabilization programs, such as Housing First for Youth, obviously. And of course, the scaling programs like Housing First for Youth can provide stable housing and wraparound supports, but this is also a foundation for a lot of other life outcomes, including employment, education, health, and well-being. And in terms of investment, Steve also mentioned that we need to make sure that there is going to be a sustainable infrastructure in place, as well as funding models to sustain Housing First for Youth programs and communities. And this is the way that we think would be more humane. Thank you so much. I'll hand it over to you, Erica. How am I doing in terms of time? Good.
Awesome. Thanks, Ahmed. And thanks for, I feel like sometimes, I don't know if I can say this, Housing First gets a bad rap because there's so much focus on the housing, right? But I feel like what you've just painted this picture and is all the other elements and factors that go into those supports that are needed, and to not take those other supports for granted, and to talk about things like hope is just as important, And Heidi Walter, come on up. Oh, wait. Sorry, folks. Awkward. I should do a little music here for you all. Okay. Ready?
Yes. Steve's also my boss. There's a theme happening here. Except I am not a researcher. I call myself a researcher because I want to be a part of the COH team. And so I tell them that, but I would be the social worker of the group. So all of my experience, all of the lens that I bring, and the work that I have done has been in service delivery, starting off in group care, and then Steve had shared with you, moving into that Housing First for Youth world, and also the pieces around family and natural supports that, if you know me, those are my two passions in life besides my family and my dogs. So I'm going to share with you some pieces around family and natural supports. I'm really, really crazy and passionate about family and natural supports, and so I can talk about this forever. It's really difficult for me to try to cover everything that I would want to share with you and allow you to leave with. I'm going to do my best. We do have a training that is multiple days long, but I kind of took the highlights, so please afterwards ask questions. Before I get too far into family natural supports, it's really important to recognize that the concept of family natural supports, it's not new. Our trainings, our models are very much presented in a Western framework. It reflects what Indigenous people in these lands have always known and practiced. It's well rooted in kinship, family, and community. It is what so many communities across the globe have seen as family and natural supports. In Indigenous societies and also in many other communities, no one would be left to face isolation or homelessness. It is about practicing belonging, connection, and it's woven into many people's ways of life. And so wanting to really speak about that up front, that this isn't a new solution, but us in a Western framework really want to talk about those teachings and practices that we are wanting to implement, that many have known as truths for generations. The one thing that is always important for us to start off with is the goal of the Family Natural Supports model and philosophy is not to move kids back home. And it's really important for the kiddos and the young people that you're walking alongside that they know that, because we made that mistake years ago. And so when we were starting to get curious and ask kids about their families, they started to back off because they were like, I don't want to talk about them. I don't want to be with them. I don't want to be under their roof. And so we really had to take a step back and realize that our language needed to change and our approach needed to change. And it was more about, no, we want to help prevent youth homelessness. We want to make sure that it's prevented and that it doesn't need to happen beyond here. The other thing that's really important for service providers and for young people to know is that when we say the word family and natural supports, especially the word family, it implicates a lot of people. If, in the training, we talk about family, but like if one of the activities that we do is like, who are your families, right? We're not talking about necessarily bloodlines. We're not talking about people that are biologically connected to you. We are talking about adopted family. We're talking about found family. We're talking about chosen family. I have incredible people in my life that I've had for like 25 years that I have no blood relation to. I don't even live in the same province as them, and they're my people. And so these are who we're talking about when we talk about family and natural supports. Also, another big piece is that when we speak about family, there's a belief that all kids come from bad families, and that is not true. As a parent, as somebody who stands in front of you who has messed up time and time again, and my children continue to love me. One of them is mad at me right now. That's why I giggled, because my watch is going off and he's telling me off right now. So my whole training is based on real time. Like, oh, just so you know, I'm still screwing it up, and he's 28. But kids don't come from bad families. Are there young people that have had experiences? Are there some things that have happened in families that look like abuse and that look like neglect? Absolutely. But one of the things that we have learned is that we've made a lot of assumptions around families, and sometimes we haven't given enough attention and opportunity for families to also heal, for families also to learn different coping skills, for families to also be able to show up in a different way, whoever those families are. And so when we start to think about the word family, I really am cautious with all of the communities that Steve mentioned that I have the honor and privilege of working alongside, is that we have come accustomed, especially within the systems that we work in, is that we want to protect. We want to protect these kids. I come from, I shared with you, group care. We used to get infocons sent to us from these young people, and it was just like, don't let them talk to their family. Their families are bad. They can't, like, you call them an AWOL. And so our mindset became to protect. And we're now on this path of, we have to undo all of that. We cannot protect these young people. We are not with them for forever. And so we really want to focus on what do we mean when we talk about family natural supports, because we're not saying you got to go live with mom. You've seen this slide, I'm sure. If you have ever listened to Steve, or if you've ever gone onto the COH Homeless Hub, you've seen this slide. It's important, so that's why we keep using it over and over again. These are all the models that we work within. You can see Family and Natural Supports is on the far left-hand side. Housing First for Youth is on the far right hand. We absolutely still see Housing First for Youth, even though it feels like an intensive intervention, it is, but it's still making sure that our kiddos do not go beyond that. If we're doing warm transfers into the adult services, I'm sorry, like that, we didn't prevent what we have sought out to say that we are preventing. There are going to be some young people that are going to need lifelong supports. The majority of our kiddos should not go past this stream on here, which is why Steve and I fight about the age ranges, which I've heard we're going to have it out. So I'm really looking forward to that one. So the yellow stream, you'll see family natural supports. It runs through everything that we do. Steph and I were just talking to a new friend that we have from Winnipeg over at the COH table, and we were explaining that anything that we do, if it's diversion, if it's shelter work, if it's Housing First for Youth, if it's drop-in, we need to be practicing the philosophy and the program model of the family natural supports. Social inclusion and community integration. This was Steve's, this was one of the pieces that Steve just talked about. It's our 5th core principle in Housing First for Youth. It's also the 5th core principle in Housing First, if you want to do a side-by-side comparison. I have like the coolest job in the world, no joke. I get to work not just with Steve and Ahmed and so many people in this room and so many people on these teams, but I've also had an opportunity to work alongside Sam Sambaris, who has taught me years and years of information and teachings that I just would never be able to get into a book. And one of the things that Steve and Sam always say simultaneously, even when they're not in the same room together, is that what they meant when they created this 4th core principle was family natural supports and community and connection and belonging and wellness and all of that. They couldn't have said all 12 of those words. They needed to call it a little bit smaller, but that's actually what it is. And so thinking about if you're coming from a Housing First adult world or if you're coming from the youth world, this is what we mean when we talk about that 5th core principle. I will share with you that we used to think that we were doing family natural supports really well, and we were doing social inclusion and community integration really well, and we weren't. I will tell you all of the messes that we made, but some of those kiddos from Toronto and Ottawa that Steve and Ahmed were talking about, we had to have some hard conversations. They weren't hard for them because we had relationships, but it was hard for some of the things that we heard where they said, like, this is an area that you didn't do your best in, and you need to go back and do some more. And so we have really, as Steve had shared, we've really broken down this area to say, we need to do more of this. We need to focus on this principle so much more than, it's not an add-on. It is housing, and then it's like, we got to get connected to this. I have, as Steve shared with you, I do a lot of trainings all over, period. And there was a young person in Oklahoma City who was a part of their youth advisory board, and he was sitting in the training, and he had done some quick math. I told you I was a social worker, so I believed him. And so we were talking about social inclusion and community integration, and at that time, they were offering a Housing First for Youth program. He had graduated from it, and he said, I was in that program for 4 years. And we were like, yeah, didn't really know where this is going. And he said, if I live to be the age of 85, you've actually only walked alongside me for 94% of my life. Or sorry, see, math. 6% of my life. Who did you help me get ready for with the next 96%? There were so many professionals in the room, from PhDs to masters to people who had just left college, and none of us had an answer because we weren't doing enough to get them ready for the next 96%, right? 94%. I'm so bad. I told you that, though. It was a big number, okay? We didn't do enough. That's what you need to hear from me. And so we went back. We went back to Housing First for Youth, and we said, like, we need to focus on this. Those Ottawa kids, they taught us so much, the Toronto kids, but also the Calgary kids. All of the kids have taught us so much around this. So in the last session Steve was just doing, somebody had asked, like, where is your research coming from? Our research is truly coming from young people, their family, the people that they have said, these are the people that matter to me, and we need you to talk to them. So one of the things that we did, and we've got some amazing folks from our YSB site here, but we have continued to follow up with 16 young people that we were introduced to in 2017. My teammates here might get mad at me because I didn't check these notes with them, but I actually think that this is one of the first studies, and I know we can't like call it a study because of the number, I have learned that much, but that we followed young people for this long after exiting a Housing First for Youth program. Am I correct in that? Yeah, I am. So that's so good to know that I am really correct. I'm correct. So Erica and I actually, we have talked to these kids all of this time. We provide honorariums, and so we were learning, and Ahmed and team also learned that this was really important for us to continue to find out what happens after Housing First for Youth. Like, was it successful? Did it work? And I know I'm not giving you a large number of young people, but it's the largest number we have right now. And these kiddos continue to show up, and they're not kiddos anymore. They're like in their 30s, some of them. But they continue to tell us why prevention needs to happen, what sustained the outcomes, where we needed to do more, and what we needed to, where was the most impact that we had. So lots of themes and outcomes that we had. So these were our areas that we focused on in all of our conversations with young people, and then also in the qualitative and quantitative studies that we did. Ahmed, you ready for me? I'm ready for you. Okay, so housing stability. One thing that I haven't talked to Steve about this yet. This is how we do supervisions. We do it in front of everybody so we can't get super mad at each other. And I was like, it would be really cool if we did like, we renamed Housing First for Youth, but like we put a comma after housing. Like it was housing, comma, and then we're gonna do all the other stuff. Because one of the things that we're seeing is people in media, funders, communities are saying Housing First doesn't work. Housing First for Youth doesn't work. Landlords upset with us because they're saying that model doesn't work. And we have kindly and gently pushed back saying, but you weren't doing it right.
Yep.
Thank you, because sometimes I'm like, I'm gonna say something, how's that gonna feel? But like, we were also those people, so like, we know, and Steve will share with you, like the 5 core principles, think of them as a recipe. You cannot make cookies without baking soda, I know this for a fact, like you can't. And so they don't turn out, and so you have to put the baking soda in the cookies in order for it to to happen, and so you have to have these things. And so, one of the things, again, is social inclusion, community integration, family, found family, chosen family, right? These young people were saying this was the difference, but we needed to work on housing stability first. We needed to make sure that my basic needs were met in order for me to start thinking about any of those other pieces. As a matter of fact, our Ottawa young people that shared with us, it wasn't until the 3rd year after they left the Housing First for Youth program that they started working on their mental health. So we asked more questions about that, and they were like, I was still so stuck in my flight or fight zone that I wasn't able to actually think about what was going on. Young people were saying things like, I was so scared every day that I still woke up thinking that somebody was gonna give me an eviction letter, that I actually needed years to go by to realize that nobody was coming to take my keys away from me. And then I was like, okay, I'm ready to do this journey. And so that was really insightful for us to think about, while we need to provide young people opportunities to have mental health services and substance abuse services, we might not see that. And don't think it won't happen, but again, we're only we're 4% of their life, right? So we might not see everything. I'm not saying don't give it and don't provide it as an opportunity, but we might not see it because we didn't see it sometimes with these kiddos. A lot of the Ottawa young people, this was like such a proud moment to be able to celebrate them on all of their successes that they worked so hard for, was so many of them went on to post-secondary school, like Ahmed said. So many of them have graduated with degrees now, they're married, some of them have shared baby pictures with us, and the other big thing is that they connected back to family, whatever that looked like for them. I told you I have limited time. Relationships are everything. I used to have this really cool boss, and she said to me, relationships are the conduit to change. There is no other, like you can just put a period at the end of that sentence and that's it. Without relationships, you have nothing. They are the basis for everything. So we spend a lot of time in all of our trainings and all of our materials and all of our community practices and reflective practices to say, without taking the time to build this, we're not going to get anywhere, and young people actually told us that. We don't listen and we don't take advice from people that we don't have a relationship with, unless we have to evacuate a building because it's, but really relationships take time, which is why we do not have time limits on our models.
That's right.
We also have low caseloads, but we won't talk about that today. Personal growth and developmental impact. Again, so the fabulous research folks, they were able to get this information from young people in different types of surveys. I did a lot of the focus groups, so I got to do the pizza parties, and I got to do all the fun things. That was kind of mean. Sorry about that, now that I reflect on that. But anyways, a lot of the kids had said that they had much more independence. They had the ability to use their voice in so many more different ways. But again, one of the pieces that always came back was family natural supports. Interesting fact. Well, we thought we were really concerned about COVID when it hit, specifically for the young people that were in our Housing First for Youth programs, because so many of those organizations, bless their hearts, they had to follow policy and procedures where we didn't know what was going to happen in the world from minute to minute. And so many of them weren't allowed to do like the home visits or spend time with kids because we didn't even know a park was safe, if you remember back then. Young people took it upon themselves to actually call their people because they could talk about something that everybody in the world had in common, and they didn't have to talk about the hard shit. They didn't have to talk about all the crunchy stuff. They didn't have to say, you haven't apologized yet. They didn't say any of those things, and it was really cool. But what they said was, you could have helped me pick up that phone a little bit sooner. And so that's what we're thinking about when we say prevention, is that we want to help them with those communication pieces. We want to be able to say, if you're scared to pick up the phone, we will help you do that, and we'll help you continue to do that until you don't need us to do that anymore. So while Steve and Ahmed shared, we saw an increase of that, they did come back to us and say, you could have helped me do that sooner. So we heard that, and we're doing it. Education and career development. This is a big one for us. Steve and Ahmed shared with you already, but one of the things that I want to highlight is that we are currently, we're all researching and we're doing together across the country again in another demonstration project around family natural supports tied to employment and education programs, because we were thinking that everybody needs to be trained in family and natural supports, and that it's everybody's job. It's not just a family and natural supports worker. It's not just a Housing First for Youth worker. It's everybody's job. And so currently we are working alongside education and employment workers and F&S workers in the same organization, and we are seeing huge increase when young people are getting that support and those communications and the same messaging from everybody in that organization. It's just going really, really well. So even though the kids are focused on education and employment with certain people, those people are picking them up at that day and saying, who'd you talk to? How'd that conversation go? Do you need to vent to me? Do we need to role play that? Like, everybody's playing a part in it. Shout out to Kat Main, because this is my favorite slide, and she did this for me. The role of the professional. This one's a little bit sticky too, so ready for it. We are so important as professionals in young people's lives. We have an opportunity, and they've given us the privilege to walk alongside them, but we are not their forever people. We can't promise that because we don't know where we're going to be in 20 or 30 years, or even in 5 or 10 years. We know that we have a retention issue within our sector. We know that people get promoted, people move on. And so we really want to see our role as somebody that is brief and purposeful, that it's supportive and not central. We are currently in the process, very exciting. We're putting the design work on our first ever Family and Natural Supports Operations Guide, which is going to come out before the end of the year. You're the first ones to hear that. And so we're going to talk about all of these pieces, but we're also going to talk about coaching versus mentoring. And you can see that up there because young people, not us, actually said that they would like us to not use the word mentoring. Mentoring infers that somebody needs to be in the middle between them and that it's broken. And we don't want to give them that thought. So we want to stand on the sidelines and we want to coach. And we want to provide tools and skills because when we're not there, they will be able to have those conversations. They will be able to walk through those muddy situations with their family because they've got the skills to do so. And so you will see us calling out that we're not using the word mentoring because we've heard that from young people, and we want them to make sure that they see that we are listening and putting it into the work that we are doing. I think this is getting close to the end. Some changes that we have made. These were really important for us. We thought we were doing a good job. We were not. Come to the 2-day training because we talk a lot about the shitty things that we did and how we show up differently now. We realized that we were doing really good family natural supports work when the family was showing up and when the family presented themselves. To do really good family natural supports work, you need to make sure that all of your young people have people, not just the ones that are showing up to intake meetings or are calling you and asking you questions or looking for research or referrals or community linkages. So we seek people out. We do not wait for them to come to us, whoever they are. We also have barrier removal funds. In a couple of sessions so far, the last 2 days, people have talked about flex funds. We like to use the language barrier removal funds. This is a key component to our programming with family and natural supports because we need the ability to have funds that we can use dependent on what families need and young people need. We have enhanced our family natural supports training and technical support. So we just don't go into communities for 2 days now. Unfortunately, you sign a contract. That means that we hang out together for the next year. We say see you later after the 2 days, and we do reflective practice and we do coaching on an ongoing basis. And we have drastically reduced the caseloads. If you have read the Family Natural Supports Model Guide, you will see that it said 20 to 25 at one point, and we are now down to 8 to 12. We are not doing good work in those large numbers. We have a snapshot up here that shows you our data that we have been able to publish from last year's FNS demonstration site, so please take it with you. Lots of folks are using it currently to put in front of funders to saying, this is actually working, this is more cost effective, you should give me money to do this. So we have that for you here. And this is us. That's us. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Heidi, who always puts so much heart into the FNS work. Yes, it's always so lovely to see your passion coming out. And thanks to our panelists. It's always so humbling to work alongside people and hear about all their great work and to be part of that team. We are almost there, folks. We have some time for Q&A. Sophie, yes, our lovely volunteer room ambassador, has the mic. So any questions, please, let's use the mic for folks that are tuning in virtually and who might need audio support.
Thank you.
Did you just do this?
Hi. Jocelyn Helland here. Have a quick question for all of our wonderful panelists. Thank you very much. I love the model. It's very cool to see that you're getting some long-term data. I imagine you can't. The answer is probably going to be no. But have you been able to start to disaggregate the data around ethnicity and particularly its effectiveness for Indigenous and Black youth? And then I also am always putting the pitch in for former youth in care in terms of the effectiveness of this model for those groups. I imagine the answer is not yet, but want to put the plug in anyway.
It's kind of, whoops, does that work? It's kind of not yet. But one of the challenges is that to do with the quantitative research, you need those disaggregated groups there to be enough of them to actually do an analysis, right? And so that's one of the challenges. So it's possible that we can do some of that, but it's not just a matter of should we do it or not. It may not be possible, or we may not produce outcomes. But in terms of Indigenous youth, the one thing we did do is work with our community partners to develop an Indigenous-led approach to Housing First for Youth. Kathy's been author on many of the articles that explain like how it works and how it's effective with young people. We used a different methodology. It was, again, Indigenous-led methodology to do the outcomes research on it. So we have, and we're we do need to look at the youth in care to see if there's any differences, because that's really important. There were some interesting challenges around the Housing First for Youth in care, because it took a lot of time to get trust on the part of the child protection side. Like they weren't referring to the program. Again, it's the protection piece. But anyway, all of that's important and will evolve over time, right? So, there exist other program evaluations out there that show similar kind of positive results. And over time, we'll be able to we should have a Housing First for Youth that focuses on Black youth, right? And experiment with these different things. And so we're looking forward to more data and more knowledge, right? Because the more we learn from it, the more we can continuously improve these things.
Great, thanks, Jocelyn.
Get ready.
You had mentioned that FNS training would be good for everybody, which I totally agree with. For Housing First for Youth caseworkers, is it enough that they have the FNS and they're doing it for the youth, or should I be looking for funding for people that are just dedicated to doing that work?
Love your question, Andrea.
Heidi, use the mic just for virtual.
Oh, right.
This one here. This one. Oh, look, we've got.
Andrea, you could do both. I don't have a preference. I like family natural support standalone programs where you have FNS workers that are working alongside Housing First for Youth, but being familiar with your model and how you're set up, I think that it would be really great for your housing workers, everybody that's on your campus, to be trained in FNS. But I also think it would be great to have a couple of FNS workers alongside. The thing that I always just caution is that if you, Andrea has a big, lots of young people that they support, you can't make all referrals to those two FNS workers. So what we started to see was, when I was in Housing First for Youth, we were we're just going to refer to the FNS workers. And then all of a sudden they had caseloads of 30. And so you can't do good family work because you're not just working with the young person, right? You're working with their whole circle. And so I think it's important to have FNS workers for some of those stickier families that are going to need much more intensive. But I also think there's a responsibility for your Housing First for You staff to be able to do some of those pieces as well. I don't know if that answers, but I think a mix would be good, but also setting in some boundaries, saying our FNS still only have caseloads of 8 to 12, and you've got many more kids than that. So yeah, I hope that answers your question. Just, yeah, it got a little bit away from us where everybody all of a sudden, like the FNS workers, there was like a huge wait list. And we were like, oh shoot, we think that only these two people can do family work now. Yeah. I'm excited to come and see you, by the way.
Go ahead.
Oh, I wasn't sure if anyone else was trying to answer. So when you're thinking about I'm sorry, I'm Aubrey, she, her pronouns. When you're thinking about family and natural supports and more broadly community and social integration, obviously I think starting with people's family or their people who they want to be their people is naturally the first place to start. Have you seen any promising strategies that programs are using that are more consistent, not so maybe systematized, maybe not, but to build new natural supports or new connections, new community while someone is engaging with caseworkers in the program? Because I think, like, I'm based in the U.S. and that's something that, you know.
Where are you from?
Chicago.
Lovely.
It is, correct. It is lovely.
It is. It's such a beautiful place and a great
Yeah.
pizza too.
Thank you.
I'm sure you have much more to offer than just pizza and friendly faces. That is a tricky question because no, the answer is no, because we have seen connections happen from swimming lessons to baseball coaches to taekwondo to school, where they find their people. It's kind of like how we find our people. We're seeing, because we're studying right now mostly employment, we're seeing young people that are on work experience that are like, oh, I'm going out to, like, some of our kids are older, but they're like, I'm going out for wings and a beer after work. And so, like, everybody's so individualized. What I can tell you, and please, if anybody has anything to add to this, the one thing that was never successful was the big life skills groups. Like the Wednesday night life skills, in my experience, when I was offering them and I put so much effort into those calendars, all the different colored markers and the stickers and all of the things, whiteboards, and oh my gosh, so much effort. Nobody ever came. And then it like took me years though to realize I didn't learn on Wednesday night how to do laundry. Like there's nothing normal about, right? And so we haven't seen a lot of success with that, which is again why it's like low caseloads, no time limits, because everything needs to be so individualized. What I can share with you with the group stuff is big celebrations, like your Thanksgiving dinners or your Christmases. Like allow young people, if you do those big celebrations, tell them that they can do a +1 or a +2. We started doing like Mother's Day. It wasn't called Mother's Day because not everybody wants, but it was like the Mother's Day tea and like the Father's Day barbecues where you could bring a person to the barbecue that was meaningful to you, and you could bring somebody to the tea that was meaningful to you. So we set it up in that space. I will share with you, knock on wood, we never had an incident, and we had some big groups because it was coming together. And so I know that there's always like some concern about like, is this gonna work? You know, confidentiality, but like it's gonna happen with or without us. We go back to the protection versus connection piece, right? So I don't know if that helps.
I've got a few other things to add on this, on like approaches to doing this. There's a community organization in north part of Toronto that works with young people who are coming out of the justice system. And what they do is they talk to the young person, like ideally long before they are being discharged. But they'll say, we want to put together a support team for you, but we want you to pick the people. So, you know, back and forth, like how many? Well, maybe like 4 or whatever, but tell me about who might be on that list for you. And they might go, oh, my grandma is really important to me, or something like that, but the young person might also say, oh, I had this teacher in grade 5 who was awesome. Really liked that teacher, and haven't seen them for 10 years or more, right? And so what's interesting with that program? What is that when, you know, they approach the teacher and goes, oh, I remember so-and-so, yeah, sure. The people generally, when they're asked to be part of the support team, generally show up and say yes. So that's important, you know, like people generally want to help. The other is, what's Nia's last name?
Whoa.
That's bad. Well, you see, just so you know, I'm terrible with names, so
I can't think of it, yeah.
so also with faces. But anyway, so it's, she's from Wales, and, you know, for her PhD, she tested out this approach to basically graphically mapping the important people in your life and having conversations about the characteristics of that relationship, and would you rate it as good or, you know, challenging, and then do it again, you know, every 6 months to see what's changed and that kind of thing. And that seemed to me to be like, you know, a visual approach that's fairly compelling, right? And but again, it comes down to people having, you know, the core principle of Housing First for Youth is youth choice and youth voice. You want it driven by the young people.
We really changed our language. I know that like we don't have time to talk about this, but we really changed our language and our processes, our case management. Like we have like cheat sheets upon cheat sheets now. It's like kids were like, young people were like, don't ask us who our emergency contact is. You're so institutionalized. But one of my favorite things is like just recently they were like, why don't you just ask us who our longest snap streak is with? You get the same answer. You get the same answer. Like I have people that that follow me on my, what do you call it? Find Me app, like just in case I got lost. And like, so it's like, who do you share your location with? Like there's no reason why we can't ask questions that like, because so many young people were saying like, I don't have anybody that supports me. But what they meant was, I don't have a house to go to. I don't know how to access that house. Those people don't have money, so I can't go and ask them for money, but it didn't mean that somebody didn't love them or wasn't gonna show up for an appointment like Steve was talking about. And so when we were using these really big professional words like support, they were saying, no, I have nobody. But when we started to be like, no, you do have, like, you talked to somebody on TikTok, who's that person?
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, like on day 2 of our training, we get into like, what do we do with people that are unsafe? Or what do we do with street family or whatever, right? But like, do you know what I mean? Like we work through all of that stuff, but we had to really change the way we were showing up.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hi.
My name is Laho. I'm here from Whitehorse, Yukon.
Wow,
Yes. Yes, so far away.
so cool.
And so cold, yeah.
And so cool.
It's over there somewhere. Yeah.
I hope I'm not so off topic, but the organization I'm working with is having like a new, like kind of new units, like 68 units opening this March. And they have already promised like 15 units for the youth. And the number is so big for us because the whole number we have on our by name list is only like 200 maximum.
Is that adults and youth?
Adults and youths
Okay.
and seniors. But that's my question because like we've never had more than 2 youth on our list, the by name list. So yes, and we are just working on it like because we have like promised 15 units for youth, but they are not on the list. So we are trying to make some connections with other organizations that specifically work with the youth. Should that be the only work we do, or should we also ask them to work on like asking the youth to be on the by name list? Because it is like a procedures that as you talk, I feel like it's not so interesting for the youth. So is it like a regular thing not to have youth on the by name list, or should we work on it, or should we also only, depend on the organizations that are specifically working with the youth?
Wow. You might be the only community in Canada that I think has 2 young people on a by names list.
Which is not, it's
Yeah.
not representative of.
I would say yes, they should be, and because they need the supports. I think to have low numbers can be misleading, and often people say, but if you're the only option in your community is a shelter that is for adults, you're going to have fewer young people show up, right? And so then you have to think, which you were getting at, what public institutions are young people engaged with? They're engaged with schools. They're engaged with healthcare. It may be that those institutions know about young people who are struggling, right? But they're not showing up to the homelessness services. Yeah. They're showing up to public institutions. So it's different ways of coming at where, like most young people, well, every young person who is experiencing homelessness was in school once, right? And a lot of times there was a teacher who knew something was wrong but didn't know what to do. So it's to think more creatively, like put the young person at the center in your thinking, and where would they go, and where would they not go, and why would they not go? And that issue around there not being any shelter for youth or something. Not that, and I don't even think that that's the best thing that we can do, but if their only option is an adult one, it's not only the case that young people may not want that, but it's probably not a good idea that they're at that place anyway.
I think the other thing too that's like sticking out in my mind is, and we talk a lot about this with coordinated access and matching tables and by name lists, is that, bless our hearts, we don't talk enough about family natural supports. We go right to, okay, we use the tool, then we put them on the list, and now we match
now
to
what?
see who has an opening bed and which person is going to be the best fit. And I have sat at CA tables, I've been at matching tables. I for sure was a problem because I didn't ask those questions. And so I think all of us, because we're not going to be able to do this in a silo, I think all of us need to gently push back and say, before we're placing young people in programs, we need to ask a few more questions to get way more curious about, did all of us collectively in the community, whoever is like, did we check to see who their people were, if their peoples were options? Like, because I think by name lists, like sometimes, yes, young people, we need shelters, we need housing first for youth, we need outreach, we need FNS, but we need to ask those questions before we put young people in programs, because young people sometimes have people that they could have gone to instead of putting them in their own apartment in isolation. Thank you.
Looks like we maybe have time for one more question. Yeah, go ahead.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for a wonderful presentation and really allowing us to see what housing means. My question is this. We constantly talk about youth, but what's the definition in terms of the age? Because I do.
No, yeah, it's true.
The definition of youth homelessness that we've developed about 10 years ago has it from 13 to 24. And given that our research shows, I'm pausing to remember if I said this in this session, but our research shows that of young people who are currently homeless, 40% had their first experience before they were 16, right? And the infrastructure for youth homelessness in the homelessness sector doesn't target them. There's and it's not that child protection is the solution, because that group of young people have very much more complex needs than those who had the first experience later. But one of the things that characterizes them is that a vast majority of them were involved in child protection.
Okay.
Right, and so we need to get to those young people. They're the ones with the complex needs. They're the ones who are experiencing early episodes of homelessness, and we're doing nothing to help them. So,
the reason why I asked that question is because I've been in circles where everyone thinks that once you're 18 and over, you're an adult.
Yeah.
And so persons are in a shelter system and they're not being identified as youth because they're over the age of 18.
That's right.
And I think that simple definition needs to be clear to everyone so that we know exactly what group we're dealing with. So going back to your question, you may very well have more persons in your shelter that are categorized as youth, but because of your definition in terms of the age, and persons, it's all over the map. And that's the reason why I asked that simple question.
So if you go in the homeless hub, that definition is there, right? And so that can be helpful.
The other thing too is
And
that
on top of, go ahead. No, no.
The other thing is too is that we are helping adult serving organizations because we know that they've got the 18 to 29-year-old young people, is that Housing First for Youth doesn't work. Or sorry, Housing First, it does work. Housing First, I was like, and here's the bomb, it doesn't work. Class dismissed. Housing First, like, we can't be doing Housing First just because their birth date came and like we made them a cake. They still need Housing First for Youth. And so
Yeah.
how are we showing up with Housing First for Youth, with those young people that are accessing adult services? Because you're right, it's not, there's a lot that cut off at 18, and so, but we still need to do that.
And with adolescent development, there's variation in which,
Yeah, I just
how
wanted to
people
point
develop.
out that too. I mean, like in different organizations, there's like little communication between different sectors. And for instance, Employment Social Development Canada, considers everyone like above 16 all the way to 29 as a
Yeah,
young
that's
person,
right.
right? And
For
then the
political parties is up to
and
35.
Exactly.
Like the
yeah.
youth
In every
conservatives.
province, that might be also different, like, and
Close it off.
there has been like issues in terms of systematic data collection because, again, age range might be different across provinces. But thank you, that was a key question.
I have one thing before we go, that we are launching a youth homelessness prevention toolkit. That's online and it'll have the definition. There's a QR code here, so there are cards here, French and English. It's like a great resource. It's all like in one place. So if you're interested in that, take one of these cards and have a look.
Awesome.
So
Okay.
you're coming for one.
On that note, sorry.
Our Chicago friend, we are big
Absolutely.
fans of Point Source Youth, and we work alongside them with some of their DCT stuff and Housing First for Youth, and they've just approached us to ask us if we will do some family natural supports and Housing First for Youth webinars. So if you follow them, you'll start to see those be coming up in the next couple of months. They've asked us to revisit what do we mean by that stuff.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, well, thanks everyone for staying to the very end. And thanks to our panelists again. You did a great job. And hope everyone has a lovely evening, and we'll see you back tomorrow morning. Take care, everyone.